Greetings everyone, my name is Zoe, and today I will share with you a past that I can never forget. Every time I recall it, my heart aches, and I can't stop reproaching myself. It's a tale that I wish I had never gone through, but life never goes easy on individuals. It all transpired many years ago when I was just 18 years old, residing with my family in London, a magnificent city, but also filled with dark corners. I believed I had everything. My family is quite affluent. My parents are both successful individuals. My father is a busy entrepreneur and my mother is an interior designer with refined taste. Despite their hectic schedules, my parents always strive to make time for me and my two twin brothers, Cade and Logan. They are 2 years older than me, and if I had to describe them, I could only say that they are both very attractive and charming. Honestly, I've always been proud to have two brothers like them. As the youngest child in the family, I was indulged by my parents. They never let me lack anything, from material possessions to affection. But truthfully, I always felt that my parents' love, no matter how great, could not compare to the love my two brothers had for me. They are not only my siblings but also my protectors, my companions who always safeguard and shelter me. The reason I think my two brothers love me more than my parents is because they always show me gestures and actions that can only come from deep concern. My parents can love me by ensuring I have a full and comfortable life, but Cade and Logan always do more than that. They understand me in a way that my parents sometimes cannot. When I am sad, they always notice, even if I don't say it. When I need someone to confide in, they are always the ones who listen without judgment. When I was little, every time I fell or was bullied at school, Cade and Logan were always the ones who stood up to defend me. Once I was laughed at by my classmates because of the dress I wore that day, and when I came home crying, the two brothers not only consoled me, but also went to school to discipline those kids. They did it not by using violence, but by sharp words and a cold demeanor that made those people never dare to touch me again. To me, they were like heroes, always ready to appear whenever I needed them. I remember the evenings when the whole family would gather together, but I would only want to sit between Cade and Logan. They would always give me tight embraces, sometimes even arguing over who would sit next to me. They always joked that I was their little princess and that it was their duty to protect her for the rest of their lives. Gradually, I began to feel that their love was unlike anyone else in the family. They were also the first people to help me overcome the challenges of adolescence. When I felt insecure about my appearance, Logan spent the evening teaching me how to apply light makeup, telling me how beautiful I was without having to change anything. Cade helped me choose the right clothes, always praising me as the cutest little sister in the world. They made me feel special, loved unconditionally. In my eyes, my two brothers were not only my family, but also my most important emotional support. When my parents were busy with work, Cade and Logan were the ones who took me to school, helped me with my homework, and always made sure that I never felt lonely. There were late nights when I couldn't sleep. I would often knock on their door and always receive a warm welcome. They would tell me funny stories or simply sit next to me until I fell asleep. It was those little things that made me believe that their love for me was far greater than what I had ever received from my parents. Nevertheless, that affection, which I once believed was innocent and benign, became the origin of what would torment me incessantly. However, to narrate that tale lucidly would necessitate more time. I am uncertain if anyone will comprehend, but everything that transpired when I was 18 was genuinely a pivotal moment that altered my life irreversibly. I will proceed when I gather the fortitude to confront the remainder of that recollection. I recall vividly because we were perpetually so intimate. Being the youngest in the family, I frequently engaged in foolish antics without apprehension of reprimand. Occasionally, I would spontaneously leap and embrace them or notice them seated somewhere and nonchalantly perch on their laps as if it were an ordinary occurrence. To me, Cade and Logan were not merely my siblings but also my closest confidants, individuals with whom I felt at ease and uninhibited in displaying affection. That afternoon, a balmy summer day, I had just emerged from the bedroom. The sunbeams streamed through the expansive window in the living room, generating a serene, agreeable ambience. Cade and Logan were seated on the couch, engrossed in watching television. I was unaware of their viewing choice, but both appeared deeply engrossed. Out of routine, I meandered closer, rubbing my eyes. I uttered nothing, merely crept towards them. As I neared, I observed that Cade and Logan remained oblivious to my presence. I grinned impishly, sprang onto the couch, and settled on both of their laps. At that instant, Cade was taken aback, and Logan erupted in hearty laughter. "Little sister, what mischief are you up to now?" I merely snickered, offered no response, and reclined comfortably on their laps, resting my head on Cade's shoulder. "What captivates your attention so intensely?" I inquired, but received no prompt reply. Upon glancing at the television, I discerned it was a romantic film, and at that very moment, the movie reached its zenith. The scene unfolding was brimming with sentiment. The protagonists embraced, their eyes ablaze, culminating in a fervent kiss. Cade and Logan, seemingly cognizant that I too was fixated on the screen, appeared disconcerted. Logan blushed, swiftly shielding my eyes with his hand. "Avert your gaze, Zoe. This isn't suitable for youngsters," he cautioned. I chuckled, attempting to extricate myself from Logan's hold. "I'm no longer a child. I'm 18, I retorted, my tone slightly playful, though internally, I was genuinely intrigued. Nonetheless, I persisted in attempting to glimpse the screen through Logan's fingers, giggling and bantering concurrently. At this juncture, I inadvertently shifted my hand to maintain equilibrium on Logan's thigh. Whether intentionally or not, my hand encountered an object within his pocket. The firm and warm sensation prompted me to recoil abruptly, my heart racing, and I swiftly withdrew my hand. I dared not glance at Logan or Cade. "I apologize," I muttered, then rose abruptly and dashed straight to my room. I forcefully shut the door, my back pressed against it, and my heart continued to race, as if I had committed some transgression. I perched on the bed, anxious about the recent occurrence. The image of the remote control in Logan's pocket persistently resurfaced in my mind, causing my cheeks to flush. Was I overthinking? Or was it merely an accident? I was uncertain, but the sensation of humiliation and discomfort prevented me from exiting the room. I was clueless about what Cade and Logan would think of me after this. Perhaps they would dismiss it, but in my heart, that image continued to torment me, not because my hand had touched that object, but due to the overwhelming shame upon realizing I had become so at ease that I had breached a boundary I had never before considered. It was the first instance where I felt that, despite our closeness, my relationship with my brothers seemed to possess a delicate limit I had never acknowledged. That evening, after sequestering myself in my room for a spell, I resolved to venture downstairs to the living room. Hunger was setting in, and I presumed my family was awaiting my presence for dinner. Nevertheless, a lingering sense of embarrassment from the afternoon's events remained. I couldn't help but ponder if Cade and Logan were reflecting on what had transpired, though I reassured myself that perhaps it wasn't as grave as I imagined. Maybe they had already forgotten about it. I opened the door silently and crept down the hallway, hoping to avoid their gazes. Upon nearing the living room, I paused and listened for any sounds. The room appeared vacant, and I exhaled in relief, assuming they were likely in the kitchen or elsewhere, no longer mindful of me. I tiptoed into the living room, scanning the area cautiously, only to find it deserted. How peculiar, I thought, halting before the sofa where I had sat with them earlier that day. I was still attempting to discern which channel was on the television when, abruptly, two faces peered over my shoulder, gazing in the same direction. "What are you up to, Zoe?" Logan's voice resonated right beside my ear, startling me. Cade burst into laughter on the other side, adding, "You resemble a burglar." I yelped in surprise, spinning around to find both of them standing directly behind me. Their sudden materialization nearly stopped my heart, and all three of us jumped in unison. Logan and Cade regarded me before erupting in laughter, while I clutched my chest, both frightened and amused. "Oh my goodness, you two terrified me," I exclaimed, feigning irritation while struggling to maintain a serious demeanor. In truth, I couldn't suppress my laughter, feeling as though I had been playfully ambushed. "And what about you?" You appear to be engaged in some dubious activity, Cade remarked, arching his eyebrows with a roguish grin, as Logan ruffled my hair teasingly. You aren't scheming to pilfer something, are you? I joined in their laughter at that moment. The discomfort from the afternoon seemed to dissipate. I reassured myself that what I had touched couldn't have been what I feared. Otherwise, they wouldn't be laughing so heartily. This realization allowed me to breathe easier, and I endeavored to comport myself as if nothing had happened. I was merely, ensuring no one was present. I replied with a radiant smile, attempting to shift the conversation. And what were you two doing lurking behind me? Trying to frighten me? Cade shrugged, affecting a solemn expression. Indeed, I merely intended to give you a slight scare, but I didn't anticipate you'd be so easily startled. Logan chimed in, his voice laden with mirth. Who could have anticipated that you would leap like that? Your expression was absolutely hilarious. The three of us erupted in laughter. The ambience grew more jovial than ever. At this juncture, Logan placed his hand on my shoulder and declared, "All right, let's proceed to dine. The entire family is awaiting your presence." I nodded, grinned, and trailed them into the kitchen. The whole family congregated around the dining table. My parents both beamed softly upon seeing me. I settled into my chair. The cozy illumination of the kitchen instilled a sense of tranquility and peace within me. Throughout the meal, the dialogue among the family was perpetually filled with merriment. My parents discussed their occupations, while Cade and Logan intermittently ribbed me with playful quips. I, too, partook in the lively atmosphere. The sensation of mortification and discomfort from the afternoon appeared to have never transpired. Post-dinner, I assisted my mother with the dishes and then retired to my chamber to ready myself for slumber. Reposing on the bed, I reflected on the afternoon's events. Despite the mild embarrassment during the recent banter, I no longer felt apprehensive. I smiled inwardly, reassuring myself that everything would undoubtedly be fine. Cade and Logan remained the finest siblings I could ever have, and with that thought, I drifted off to sleep serenely. Yet, the tranquility was fleeting. My chamber and theirs were merely divided by a slender partition. The faintest noises, from cinematic dialogues to melodies, could effortlessly permeate through. One morning, renowned within the household for my propensity to slumber until 9 or even 10 a.m., I abruptly awoke at 7 a.m. Initially, I presumed I was roused by some forgotten dream, or perhaps the sunlight filtering through the drapes. However, upon becoming more alert, I discerned an unusual sound emanating from the adjacent room. My room was situated between Cade and Logan's quarters. Our residence, constructed in a classical manner, featured thin walls between rooms, allowing sounds to traverse easily if amplified. Accustomed to overhearing their gaming sessions or conversations, the sound that morning was distinctly unfamiliar. It was peculiar, not loud but sufficiently audible to capture my attention. Initially, I lay still, assuming they were engrossed in an action film, but as minutes passed, an unsettling realization dawned upon me. The sound bore no resemblance to gunshots, explosions, or any typical cinematic fare. Instead, it was sporadic, alternating between prolonged and rapid intervals. My heart quickened, and a disconcerting thought crossed my mind, causing my cheeks to flush. I resisted the notion, yet the sound grew increasingly distinct. It was neither music nor ordinary conversation. Despite the muffled quality, I could discern impassioned, hurried sounds interspersed with heavy breathing. I attempted to divert my thoughts, but the more I listened, the more convinced I became that my brothers were viewing something explicit. A wave of shame and embarrassment engulfed me. I pondered why I was awake at such an hour and why I was subjected to this auditory intrusion. My heart raced and my body felt aflame. I covered my face with my hands, striving to banish the inappropriate thoughts. This is intimate. Everyone encounters such moments, I reminded myself, struggling to maintain composure amidst the mental turmoil. Has witnessed such things, even I have witnessed such things, I reassured myself, attempting to quell the chaos within me. Yet, what amplified my discomfort was discerning those noises emanating from my brother's chamber. We had always shared a close and intimate bond, and I never envisaged encountering such a scenario. I desired to cease listening, but the sounds seemed to adhere to me, growing increasingly distinct. I rose, exited my bed, and silently opened my door. Uncertain of my intentions, I was compelled by an overwhelming restlessness that prevented me from remaining still. I tread softly down the corridor, endeavoring to remain silent, but upon reaching my brother's door, the sounds intensified, as if the barrier between us had dissolved. I stood frozen, a mix of embarrassment and bewilderment coursing through me. My heart raced, and my thoughts were in disarray. I understood that this was likely a common occurrence, experienced by many, but hearing it from my brother's room left me at a loss for how to respond. I bit my lip, pondering whether to retreat to my room or linger, driven by curiosity. Leaning against the door, I tried to take a deep breath to compose myself, but the hurried breathing and ambiguous sounds seemed intent on consuming all rational thought. Part of me yearned to depart immediately, yet I was held captive by the sounds, unable to withdraw. Abruptly, the door swung open. I stepped back, momentarily paralyzed. Logan stood before me, his eyes wide with astonishment. He appeared as though he had been caught in a compromising situation, and I was utterly perplexed, unable to formulate a response. We faced each other in silence for what felt like an eternity, the air thick with tension. Logan cleared his throat, attempting to alleviate the discomfort. "Zoe, why are you standing here?" His voice wavered, tinged with embarrassment, as he struggled to maintain composure. He scratched his head, averting his gaze as if reluctant to meet my eyes. Logan's cheeks were flushed, and it was evident he was deeply embarrassed. I fared no better. My heart pounded, and my body felt aflame. I lowered my gaze, unable to look him directly in the eye, managing only a stammered reply. I was just passing by." My explanation was clearly unconvincing, but it was all I could muster at that moment. Just then, the sounds from within the room abruptly ceased, and Kate emerged from behind Logan. His expression mirrored Logan's, a blend of shyness and confusion. He glanced at me, then at Logan, as if seeking an explanation, but no further words were exchanged. The three of us remained rooted in place, enveloped in an uncomfortably awkward silence. I attempted a forced smile, running my hand through my hair to conceal my discomfort. I was just passing by," I reiterated, my voice quivering slightly. "Never mind, I'm departing." I pivoted and hastily retreated, eager to extricate myself from the uncomfortable scenario as swiftly as possible. Though I didn't glance back, I could sense the two of them observing me, seemingly uncertain of how to react following the recent occurrence. Upon returning to my chamber, I shut the door and leaned against it, exhaling a sigh of relief. Nevertheless, my heart continued to race. An odd, mortifying sensation surged within me, and I couldn't dispel the memory of that instant. After retreating to my room, I perched on the bed, my thoughts a whirlwind of contemplations. The recent scene persistently replayed in my mind, the image of Logan opening the door with a bashful countenance, Cade's gaze as he emerged, the tense ambience enveloping the three of us. All of it prevented me from finding solace. I pondered their thoughts regarding me at that moment. They must have felt as discomfited as I did, perhaps even more so. However, what troubled me most was the realization that I had inadvertently overheard sounds I shouldn't have. It might have been merely an ironic incident, but I apprehended it could cast an awkward shadow over my relationship with my brothers, whom I had always cherished as my closest confidants. I concealed my face with my hands, attempting to dismiss the negative thoughts, but the more I strove to forget, the more they resonated in my mind. I reassured myself that this was merely an unforeseen situation that no one desired, and perhaps I was exaggerating its severity. I rose and traversed the room, seeking a means to alleviate the heavy sentiment. "It was merely an accident. It signifies nothing," I murmured to myself, endeavoring to find conviction. Yet, irrespective of my self-assurances, I felt compelled to act, to restore normalcy and dispel the awkwardness. Moments later, a rap sounded at the door. My heart plummeted. I deduced it couldn't be my parents, as they typically would knock when seeking me. It must be Cade or Logan. I inhaled deeply, composing myself before opening the door. Logan stood there, still appearing disconcerted, his gaze diverted, yet evidently striving to regain his poise. He ruffled his hair, an awkward grin on his lips. "Zoe, I apologize for what transpired earlier. It's not what you infer. Cade and I were merely viewing a film. Perhaps the timing was inopportune." I remained motionless for a few seconds, regarding Logan with uncertain eyes. His visage was crimson, his eyes wavering, and I could discern the bewilderment in his every utterance. Then Cade approached, standing directly behind Logan. He glanced at me, then at Logan, as if seeking an apt explanation. However, the chagrin etched on Cade's face was even more pronounced than Logan's. We stood in silence, enshrouded in a stifling atmosphere of embarrassment. I recognized that prolonging this situation would only intensify the discomfort, so I resolved to dispel the tension. I smiled, slightly abashed but endeavoring to maintain a casual demeanor. "Let it go. I meant no harm," I asserted, my tone light. "Don't appear so anxious. I was merely traversing the area, truly." Logan and Cade exchanged glances, as if communicating wordlessly. After a few seconds, Logan sighed and offered a faint smile. "Truly, Zoe, you harbor no discomfort, right?" "None whatsoever," I responded promptly, striving to assuage their unease. Then, an idea struck me to prevent further awkwardness. I grasped Logan's hand and gestured toward Cade. "Join me in my room. Let's converse for a spell, all right?" Consider it a means to dispel this awkwardness. Both of them were taken aback by my proposal but eventually consented, as if it were the sole means to evade this unease. I grinned, turned, and entered my room, leaving the door ajar, and the two of them slowly trailed behind. Once the three of us were seated on the bed, I initiated a jest to alleviate the tension. I glanced at Cade and quipped, "So, the film was truly engrossing, causing you both to lose track of time." Cade chuckled awkwardly, concealing his face with his hands. "Come on, Zoe, cease your teasing. We genuinely didn't anticipate you overhearing. I presumed you all amplified the volume intentionally," I retorted, arching my eyebrows playfully, eliciting laughter from both of us. The mirth seemed to dissipate the prior discomfort. Following a brief conversation, my inquisitiveness occasionally proved challenging to restrain, particularly upon hearing the two of them engrossed in a movie. I stole a glance at them, contemplating whether to voice the notion that had abruptly crossed my mind. After a moment's deliberation, I mustered my courage and tentatively suggested, "How about we attempt reenacting the scene from that movie?" The words escaping my lips startled me. Uncertain of their reaction, I was driven by curiosity to overcome my timidity. They turned to gaze at me, their eyes wide with astonishment. "Are you sincere?" Logan inquired, his voice tinged with bewilderment, as if he couldn't fathom my audacious proposition. I nodded, striving to maintain a serious expression. "I'm merely curious. It wouldn't harm to experiment, right?" I ventured, my voice trailing off, averting direct eye contact. "Absolutely not," Cade responded promptly, his tone resolute. They both averted their gazes, attempting to evade my scrutiny, but I remained persistent, unwilling to concede. I gently clasped Cade and Logan's hands, offering reassurance to both them and myself. "Just attempt it once. I desire to experience the genuine sensation." Cade and Logan fell silent. I discerned the internal struggle reflected in their eyes. After some time, Logan sighed, appearing somewhat resigned. "All right, but solely this once, and we must maintain secrecy. No one is to be informed," he stipulated, his voice low, ensuring I comprehended the parameters. The room abruptly grew quiet, with only our respiration audible. I felt my heart throbbing, each beat resonating within my chest. We commenced our exploration, each movement deliberate yet imbued with allure. Time seemed to accelerate, as if the world around us dissolved, leaving only the three of us. Upon conclusion, the sun was at its zenith, bathed the room in luminosity. We lay silently beside one another, our breathing steady. The initial apprehension of awkwardness had entirely dissipated, replaced by a profound connection, as if we had surmounted a significant hurdle. We adjourned to the kitchen together, preparing our midday meal. Everything transpired with an uncanny naturalness, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Yet, within my heart, I recognized that our boundaries had been transcended, and rather than remorse, I felt an intensified affection for them. The shared experience seemed to fortify our bond. Logan regarded me, smiling softly. "Are you all right?" he queried, his voice gentle. I nodded, reciprocating his smile. "I'm content, and I believe I've grown even fonder of you both." The declaration brought a flush to my cheeks, but they merely grasped my hand, their gazes brimming with tenderness. "As do we," they echoed, and we resumed our repast. The joy that permeated each fleeting instant from that day forward subtly, yet distinctly altered our bond. The closeness we once savored now bore a new significance. Awkwardness vanished, and it seemed the intangible chasm between us had been bridged entirely. Each time our eyes interlocked, I sensed a novel gaze and tacit comprehension, a proximity previously uncharted. Yet, beneath the surface, I acknowledged the transgression of our deeds. We had inadvertently breached societal and moral norms. I consoled myself, attributing it to youthful impetuosity and ardor. Though I refrained from justification, our juvenile passions propelled us. Regret eludes me, yet an amorphous unease lingers. We've ceased discussing it, as if by tacit consent, relegating it to the past. Nevertheless, their altered demeanor, gentler, more cautious, betrayed their enduring concern. For my part, each glance into their eyes quickened my pulse, stirring both exhilaration and trepidation. Youthful inquisitiveness steered us onto an unforeseen trajectory. Our bond, though strengthened, teeters on a precipice, heralding irreversible change. Retrospection reveals that my impetuous conduct not only transformed our relationship, but also etched an indelible impression on my psyche. We traversed boundaries blindly, swayed by curiosity and sentiment. Though our secret remained concealed from others, I couldn't elude self-awareness. Each recollection underscores my erstwhile immaturity, a spectral reminder. I've gleaned that curiosity, though innate to youth, isn't always worth indulging, particularly when it jeopardizes life's fundamental tenets. Boundaries aren't constraints, but safeguards against deeply wounding errors. Often, restraint and grounding are paramount. Through my narrative, I proffer counsel. Don't let transient curiosity impel poor choices. Pause and ponder consequences before acting. Intense emotions, though ephemeral, can yield enduring repercussions. Cherish life's relationships and don't readily sunder boundaries for fleeting desires. Genuine love and enduring bonds aren't forged through impulsivity, but nurtured with respect, understanding, and mutual responsibility. That is quintessential